Good evening, sir.
The old man suddenly looked up, glanced briefly out the large window next to him, and saw only darkness. Had he been asleep that long? It was early afternoon when the train had departed from the station, and now the moon showed full on the rural landscape outside the speeding train.
Yes,
The old man stammered, trying to quickly collect himself and address the one who had just greeted him.
I'm sorry to bother you, sir, but I thought I should check on you. You've been asleep since the train departed Helsing Station.
The old man looked up at the man speaking to him, clearly a young train attendant, dressed in a light blue dress shirt and navy slacks. His red tie swung gently to one side as he leaned in toward the old man, waiting for a response. The old man cleared his throat awkwardly.
Yes, no, I'm fine. I just must have been dead tired coming back from a long trip. I didn't mean to sleep so long.
The attendant smiled.
It's perfectly fine, sir. I'm glad to see that you are comfortable enough to get some rest. Is there anything I can bring you? A drink, perhaps?
The old man paused for a moment, still clearing his head.
Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you. Well, I guess maybe you can bring me something. I've been quite on edge all week. Bring me something strong, please.
The attendant nodded and stepped away from the man's seating area, which contained the usual 2 seats together on one side and 2 more seats directly across from him, facing him, often enjoyed by groups of 4 passengers desiring to sit together. He was alone, however, and seemed not only to be the only one in his seating area, but the only one in his car at this point. The other passengers that had been with him in the car earlier today had all apparently gotten off the train earlier that day. Only a few moments later, the attendant returned with a drink in a small glass and placed it on the small extendable tray in front of the old man.
Thank you.
Of course, sir.
A moment passed, and then the attendant spoke again.
Are you fine being here in this car alone, at the back of the train, sir? I can arrange to have you moved to another seat in another car if you'd like.
The old man shrugged casually.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I quite like the quiet and the solitude, actually. Besides, riding in the back of the train brings back memories for me.
The attendant smiled again, paused for a moment, and then motioned toward the seats across from the old man.
Would you mind if I sit? It's been a long day and I'm pretty exhausted. And there's not much else to do at the moment, with all the passengers having disembarked already. Well, except for you, sir.
The old man thought for a moment, then gestured welcomingly.
Actually, come to think of it, I could use the company.
The attendant nodded and slowly sat in the facing seat across from the old man and sighed.
Thank you. I would enjoy a conversation that doesn't involve drinks, food, or bringing anyone an extra pillow.
The attendant cracked a small grin, and the old man smiled empathetically.
Oh, I understand more than you know. My mother was a train attendant many years ago.
Oh, really?
She passed away suddenly on one of her late-night shifts on an overnight cross-country trip.
The attendant frowned with concern.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, no, it's fine. That was so many, many years ago. Can you believe it happened at the stroke of midnight? And there was hardly anyone on the train.
How old were you?
I was 18 at the time. I had just graduated high school, and my friends and I were enjoying The last days of summer before splitting up to head to our respective colleges or jobs. Actually, our last night together was quite memorable.
Oh? How so?
Well, now that you asked, young man, let me tell you the story. It was an evening in early August. Well, like right now, actually, and quite warm. My friends and I got together for a milkshake at the diner downtown and talked about what we should do for our final night. My 3 friends, Jack, Fred, and Cynthia, all agreed that we should go check out that old abandoned mansion at the edge of town. So off we went. It was nearly 10 o'clock p.m. when we reached the old rusty gate just outside the house. We thought it might be locked, but to our surprise, the heavy iron gate just pushed open. It squeaked quite a bit, though. Set us on edge. The path that led up to the front porch of the house was overgrown with weeds. The house itself sat at the edge of the path, an old mansard-style mansion, abandoned for so long that no one remembered who had lived there. We could see that the mansion must have quite a few floors based on the different sets of windows that were set at different levels. It was at that moment that my friend Jack nudged me and said, "Hey, do you see that?" He pointed to a dim light that had suddenly appeared in the topmost window of the house, in a small tower at the highest point. Fred got excited and said we should go check it out. Cynthia, always the most level-headed of us, had doubts. Fred said he would go, and even though we were all hesitating ourselves, we weren't about to stop him. Fred was always impetuous. Once he set his mind to something, it was hard to derail him. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the light in the tower, poof, went out like a snuffed candle. The old man paused for a moment, looking out the window, and seemed to be collecting his thoughts. Then he took a small sip of his strong drink, paused to swallow, and exhaled with satisfaction. Oh, now where was I? The attendant had slid forward in his seat slightly, clearly intrigued by the story thus far.
Fred was about to enter the old house.
The old man continued. Ah, yes, Fred. Well, yes, so we didn't have those fancy cell phones when we were kids. So we had brought flashlights with us. Fred flipped the switch on his, sending a narrow yellow beam of light on the front door of the house.
"Be right back,"
Fred said, all cocky-like, and went on up the rickety stairs to the front porch. I can still remember how much they creaked. Thought he'd fall right through. Fred opened that front door, and it swung open much faster than we expected, and even Fred looked kind of alarmed. He looked back at us and shrugged, then went on inside. We could see the light from his flashlight as he proceeded up the stairs to the second level. The light paused for a moment and moved side to side as if he was looking for something. Then we saw the light move up slowly to the third floor. Again, the light moved from side to side, and we knew he must now be looking for a way up to the attic tower. After a few moments, the light from Fred's flashlight began moving straight upwards. Then, a suddenly appeared in the tower window, and poof! His flashlight went out. We wondered why Fred would have turned off his flashlight in such a dark place.
Cynthia said, "Gosh, I hope his batteries didn't die at such a terrible moment."
"I'll go check it out. Maybe that's exactly what happened," said Jack. So Jack snapped on his flashlight and entered the house. Through the front door and up the stairs to the second floor. The light moved from side to side and then upwards to the third floor. Finally, after a brief moment, the light from Jack's flashlight moved straight upwards towards the tower attic. Just as Jack's light appeared in the tower window, poof! His light went out. Cynthia squeaked in surprise. She was quite afraid, I think. And I was, at this point, quite unnerved myself. "What the—" I began, and turned on my flashlight. "Maybe we should go up there together, Cynthia," I said, but she wouldn't have it. "It's okay. Let me go. I'll wave at you from each window so you know I'm okay. Just stay here, and if something happens, I'll call for you," she said. I don't know why I let Cynthia go alone. Well, anyway, there she went, up to the porch, in through the front door, and up the first flight of stairs. On the second level, I saw a hand waving at me through the window. I could only assume it was hers. The light from her flashlight then panned from side to side, and then proceeded up to the third floor. At that point, I saw a hand waving at me from the window. I could only assume it was hers. After a moment, I saw her light moving upwards towards the tower. As if on cue, as her light entered the tower, poof! Her light went out. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Could this really be happening? And then I realized that this was too perfect. Those three had to be chiding me, trying to play an elaborate joke on our final night together. I waited a moment, and not seeing a light or even a wave from Cynthia, I decided to end their joke right then and there. I wasn't about to enter some creepy old house and let them give me the scare of my life. I knew it must be getting very late, and I looked at my watch to see that it was turning 12 o'clock midnight just at that moment. I shrugged, turned, and began to make my way home, intent on getting even with them later. It was then that I heard the scream. Never has there ever been such a scream. I whirled around to face the house, staring up into the dark window of the tower, hoping to catch some glimpse of what might be happening. I saw nothing. It was only that hideous, terrifying scream, and which continued on for what seemed to be a humanly impossible length of time. At first I thought it was Cynthia, but I knew her voice. No, it couldn't be hers. And it couldn't be Jack's or Fred's either. It was too otherworldly. The old man stopped his tale suddenly, his eyes gripped with fear as he sat in the coach seat, looking intently at the attendant. The attendant likewise sat fixed on the old man, leaning much further forward in his seat, completely fixed on the old man's every word.
And? What happened next?
The old man relaxed, took another generous sip of his drink, and continued.
Well, I did what any sane person would do. I turned and ran all the way home and told my dad, who was the only one home at the time since my mom was away for work, on that fateful train ride where she lost her life. What a night that was. Anyway, after hearing the story, Dad also assumed it must be the gang just playing an elaborate joke on me. They'll come calling later, probably tomorrow, and give you a good ribbing over the whole caper, my dad said. Well, I decided there was nothing for it except to go to bed and hope my dad was right. The next morning, I tried calling my friends, but their parents said that none of the three ever returned home last night. They thought we had done some kind of spontaneous overnight camping adventure of some sort, and they had become worried. My dad called the cops, and they ended up investigating the house. They even went up to the tower attic room. There was no sign of my friends, nor any sign that they had ever been in there.
Did your friends ever turn up?
No, I never saw any of them again. It was so long ago. I miss them. Especially dear Cynthia. The old man took another slow sip of his drink, looking out the window at the dark, speeding landscape, lost in a whirlwind of long-forgotten memories. After a while, the attendant decided to speak, hoping to put the old man at ease.
Well, thank you for telling me all this, sir. This is indeed quite a memory, albeit full of sadness.
And terror, the old man interjected. I have never forgotten that sound, that horrible scream, such as the scream of evil itself. It is now a part of me now, I fear. The attendant felt suddenly ill at ease and began to rub his pants nervously. Being at the back of a train late at night with an old man telling a story like this made the attendant feel exposed and a bit paranoid.
Well, sir, I think we must be getting close to your final stop by now.
The old man smiled weakly.
Really? It shouldn't be already. I know this route. I grew up in Helsing, you see, which happens to be the very town where my story happened. And I used to make this trip often with my mother. As a matter of fact, perhaps it was this very car when... But, well, I did sleep a long time. What time is it anyway now, young man?
The attendant furrowed his brow and looked up cautiously at the digital clock mounted on the wall.
Well, sir, actually, it has just turned precisely 12 o'clock midnight, and...